Hey, folks, greetings and welcome from the Offensive Security Group here at Secure IT 360, coming at you with a new episode of the Cyber Threat Perspective. We have a special guest today. I'm going to let Mel introduce herself shortly, but you guys know Spencer and myself. I think we're regulars at this point after 140-something episodes. But yeah, so Mel, what would you like us to know about you? And then we're really excited to hear from you with regards to how you built your security stack. Actually, you know what? Before I do the intro, we met Mel as a partner of ours, right? So we're doing pen testing with her organization, and she did such an outstanding job, and her team were so mature. We were like, we need to get her on the show so that we can help other folks understand how she's able to be so successful. So that's why she's here, folks. And I think there's a lot for us to learn from her. And with that, Mel, take it away.
Yeah. So first, thank you so much for having me on. Longtime listener, first time caller. So, I've been in IT for a little over 20 years. I started on the help desk side, and then about 13 years ago, I moved over to security, started on the technical side. So was doing patching, AV, vulnerabilities, and then moved over to the governance risk compliance side of things. So now in my role at the firm that I'm at, I get to kind of bring both those perspectives together. So, balancing the technical and the business sides of security to kind of protect both the people and the data.
I love it. I love it. And by the way, I have to say the vast majority of security leaders that we talk to who are successful have that similar background.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I see it now, like with the guys in the help desk that I work with, that, I see them and I see where I was at. And like, I always come from that place of like, what can I do to help you, get to where you want to be? Because that's what it took for me, is someone saw something in me, and that got me to where I am today. So
yeah, that's awesome. We could do a whole nother episode just on mentorship like that.
Oh, for sure.
Yes. Yeah. Similar story for me. Like there's always that one person in your life that really kind of like made you take the leap, or, whatever, kind of like was a pivotal point in your career. So interesting, all of the parallels and commonalities there for sure.
Right.
So what we're really here to talk about, though, is we want to understand the process that you went through to build the program that you have. And I think really specifically, we're talking about the security stack, because your environment and what you guys have built was so unique to what we normally see that, it's kind of led to this conversation that we're having now. So first of all, Spencer did one of the pen tests for you guys. And so Spencer, do you want to talk a little bit about like what stood out, what was unique, and then let Mel kind of run with it? Or, okay, cool.
Absolutely. I'll be super quick so Mel can get into kind of some of the nitty gritty of the tech stack. But what really stood out to me are the things that we like pontificate on this podcast, right? And the stuff that I talk about on social media. It's like, number one, not relying on EDR alone for your protection, for your security, and especially for your monitoring. So that's the biggest aspect. And I'm kind of leading the witness a little bit, I guess, if you will, for you to talk about some of that.
Yeah.
But that's the biggest thing to me is we go into so many environments and they just have EDR. Like that's all they have. And then if we're able to bypass it, or if we're able to use tools that are like, living off the land, or just, known trusted tools that don't raise a lot of alarms, or maybe less, we're less detected, right? And we know threat actors are using living off the land tools. We know they're using known good tools. They're using less malware. I think it was Red Canary or maybe CrowdStrike that came out with a report this year that said like 80% of breaches now don't have any malware in that campaign. So quite a substantial number of cyber attacks now, ransomware attacks, don't actually use that much malware. Like the ransomware itself, that's malware. But like how they get in, how they pivot, all that stuff is usually not malware outside of like the C2 that they use and the ransomware tools that they use. So that's one of the biggest takeaways for me from your engagement was, the non-endpoint based telemetry and alerting was really, really powerful.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. One of the things I hear a lot is that we have a pretty impressive security stack considering the size of our firm. And I know I didn't mention that, but we're about, 300 total employees, 150 attorneys, 150 staff, thereabout. So that was one of the things that impressed me when I joined the firm was I was like, wow, they kind of got their stuff together. Where I know some law firms are a little bit behind in that. But yeah, I mean, diving into the stack, I would start off with Darktrace as my number one. Sorry.
I'm okay. I swear.
I promise they're not sponsoring me yet. But so Darktrace, AI, machine learning, threat detection and response, really great tool that we have. Marrying that, we have Rapid7. So they're doing our vulnerability scans. They're also our MSSP. We have a tool called Kenna, which I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with. It's a Cisco tool, but they do vulnerability management and prioritization. So that kind of layers on top of our Rapid7 scans. SentinelOne, as you mentioned, is our EDR. We have Netscope, which is web filter, ZTNA, CASB, DLP, kind of all under one umbrella. Mimecast for our email security. And then we layer on that CyberGraph, which, we stop using that kind of external tagging. And so CyberGraph actually puts a banner at the top of the email when an external email is coming in. There's some user requirements. The user has to actually say, is this safe? Is it not? So we felt our users were getting a little numb to that kind of external tagging. So we went with that. Know Before for security awareness training. I'm implementing Drata right now for a GRC tool. So yeah, the list goes on, but those are, some of the ones I wanted to call out.
So here's what stands out to me, right? If you would have asked me yesterday to build the perfect stack, none of the things you just said would be in the list.
Really?
Right? None of them, not one. Right. But I think that's a net positive here, right? I think that we are thinking too narrowly when we're locking ourselves into these 1, 2, 3 things. And I think that your success illustrates the most important takeaway here. And that is, if you spend the time to tune your security stack, if you spend the time to make your tools work for you in your environment, you can make just about anything good.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and I think that's another thing that just blows my mind here is some of these tools that you're using, like I'll pick on Darktrace because I love picking on Darktrace, right? Is, in the let's just call it in the offensive security community, they don't have a great reputation.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand why, right? And it's because it takes a lot of work to make that thing sing. You guys have clearly put in the work. You have integrations with other tools. I don't think that most other adopters of some of these technologies are putting in the amount of work it takes to be successful. And I think that's what's delineating you from other folks, right? And one of the reasons that we recommend some of these other toolings is because you drop them in and they do pretty well, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're not going to perform like the stack that you just described if you don't put the amount of work into it, right?
That was going to be my next question for her was, Mel, how long have you had that?
Darktrace?
Yeah.
So we've had Darktrace since 2016.
Exactly.
And as Brad mentioned, she is a labor of love. We had to put a lot of work into getting it to where it is today.
Yep.
But I feel like it's worth it because you guys saw during the pen test, the issues that came up there and what we were seeing on our side. We were very impressed with. We were like, okay, so we're doing something good here. It's doing what it's supposed to do.
And I think that's the point, right? Is that, and what I wanted to hopefully pull out from this conversation from you and kind of touch on is that like so much of what we do is not set it and forget it. It's not just buy it and plug it in. It's not just, we have this thing, we're okay. It's a constant care and feeding. It's a constant tuning. And to Brad's point earlier is like, you can secure your environment a lot of different ways. You can use a lot of different products. To some extent, it really doesn't matter so long as you have some of the, the core features and capabilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can use pretty much anything. It's a matter of how you configure it, how you tune it. And that's really like what I think you guys have done well is like, you've clearly cared for it and fed it and nurtured it and got it to a point where now it's performing as good as anything else we've seen in many cases.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I'm stealing a line I was going to use later in the podcast, but it fits here because compliance doesn't equal security. And so people drop these tools in and then they just set it and forget it. Like, oh, out of the box, cool. We checked a box, cool. And that's really not security. You actually have to, I do at least annual health checks with all my security vendors. Hey, has anything changed? Do we have any gaps? Do we have any areas where we're not covered? And I don't know if a lot of people do that, not knocking other security managers, but it takes a lot of work. You got to keep up with it.
You do. Okay. So a couple of fun questions, right? If you had to start over from the very beginning and you have nothing in your security stack and you're starting from zero, what's the first tool that you go out and buy?
Oh, well, so I have nothing?
Nothing. No, we're starting from zero. We're going to build a brand new company with 0 employees tomorrow, and you've got to pick your first security purchase, or maybe your first 3. You can play with it a little bit if you want to, but I'm very curious to understand where you start from.
Right. So I'm going to pick 2 because they have to go together. Okay. But I mentioned Kenna Security, and it could be one of my favorite tools. So with that, you need to have some type of a vulnerability scanner in place.
Got it.
So we have Rapid7, we have Kenna. So what Kenna does is it helps with vulnerability prioritization and risk rating. So it basically tells you what's going to give you the most bang for your buck, right? You guys, I think, did a podcast recently about CVSS scores and risk and when to accept. So Kenna takes the guesswork out of it for you. And so it ingests our Rapid7 scans. It uses their own formula, which is CVSS score, exploit intelligence, right? So is it actively being exploited in the wild? Threat intelligence, does it have any malware associated with it? And then asset priority, like how critical is the asset to your infrastructure? And then it tells you, okay, so these are the ones that you should be focusing on. Because a lot of times you look at the Rapid7 scan and it's like, oh, shoot, this is a 9 and you need to handle it now. But in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't do anything to your risk score. And it's like throwing a deck chair off the Titanic. It's like nothing has really helped you where you need to be focusing on the iceberg right in front of you. And that helps the team as well. It's like what we're actually fixing is making a difference to our security posture.
I love that. I didn't even know that was a thing. But by the way, that was one of the roles I had in the banking world, was manually doing that. Like we were using like Recorded Future and OSINT and the dark web searches to like build profiles around vulnerabilities so that we could prioritize them. And we actually had an entire separate like effort. So had that tool been around, 7 years ago, it would have saved me a lot of work. But yeah, I love that, dude. I love it.
Yeah, it takes the pressure off, right? Like, I don't want to, I have enough pressure in my life. I don't want to be the one that's like, well, we have to do this one when in reality, there's one, 4 doors down that we actually should be looking at.
Yeah, no, I love it. And also, I want to say this too, right? I like how you're going with the fundamentals here, right? We didn't jump straight to dark trace and the super sexy stuff. It's like, what's the first thing you would choose? Well, I need vulnerability scanning, right? It's the basis, it's the foundation of a security program. So I like that. I think that's a great answer. So while we're still talking about the evaluation of a product, right? So, and I'm stealing Spencer's notes, by the way. I can see the look on his face. He's like, bro, those are my 5 prompts. But all right. So what does your evaluation process look like? Like, clearly you guys are doing your homework. You're going out, you're making, really intelligent decisions about how you're adding technology and products to your stack. What does that process look like? Is there any special sauce to how you evaluate security tools?
I mean, I feel like I'm not going to say anything that no one else is doing. I don't think we do anything out of the norm. First off, it's what are we trying to solve? Like, what is the problem we're trying to solve? Is it compliance? Is it a client? Sometimes our clients come to us and say, hey, we saw this new tool and do you guys have it? And you should. Or security gaps, right?
Security scorecard.
Oh, yes.
The thing that I love to hate the most. But anyway, keep going. Sorry.
We can do a whole podcast on the hate for that. But anyway, security gaps, drive a lot of those decisions, things that come out of assessment. So will this solution help reduce risk? Will it help improve efficiency? Will it support compliance? So all those things kind of go, into like my process. I'm also a team of one, really one and a half. I do have a hybrid role that, reports to me 50% of the time. So I don't want to introduce anything that's going to give me more overhead. So will it fit nicely into things that we have? Will it roll up logs to Rapid7? So those are some things that I obviously think about a lot. And is it easy to use, not just deploy, but what's the administration look like? We looked at a tool, I won't mention the name, but every time you clicked into something, it opened up a brand new dashboard. Next thing you know, I have 9 tabs open for the same product. And I'm like, no, absolutely not.
No, I love it. So what I'm hearing is you are executing the basics, but you're executing them well. And that's a trend I'm starting to notice. And we're only like 15 minutes into this. And what I keep hearing is, that you understand the fundamentals and that you're absolutely crushing them, whether it's selection or whether it's tuning or configuration, whatever it is. So I think that's really cool. Now you did mention the tool that didn't work out, right? And so Spencer, you take this one because I'm stealing all your thunder, man.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I think one of the things that's interesting to me is as we security practitioners try different tools, we implement them in our environments. Some eventually will work. Some of them we like phase out. We replace them with other products. I'd be curious if you have any lessons learned or tips from things that you've tried that didn't work out, or just things that you could any tips you could provide for people for how to evaluate these things, and maybe in particular, like, how do you decide when something's not right for your environment, other than just purely cost,
Well, I was going to say cost, but not cost, like value versus cost, because I feel like the product that I mentioned, we ended up buying, and because it was cheaper, it seemed like it was going to fit our needs. We were hoping to find something that was scalable that we could grow into. So we were starting with one piece and we wanted to grow into, the 4 other modules that it had. At the end of the day, the time and effort spent on issues we ran into when we rolled it out to the users, the help desk calls, all the troubleshooting, all the things that we ran up against, at the end of the day, we probably spent more money and time and effort than we would have if we maybe went with a little bit more mature and more expensive tool. And then we had to put our tail between our legs, and we were like, well, we can't do this anymore. Now we had to go back to ground zero and then work our way and select a new vendor, and that's more time and effort. So I sometimes think, value over cost, definitely, value outweighs cost sometimes.
And I'd be curious what those kind of conversations look like with leadership, right? Like when you spend a bunch of money on a tool or a product and you use it for a couple of years and you're like, well, this isn't turning out to be what we thought it was. It doesn't really solve the problem. Like, what do those conversations look like with your team, with leadership? Like, how do you reason those things? How do you kind of, reconcile those things with people who maybe don't have like firsthand experience with it, or kind of in a position to understand what all that means?
Yeah. So, a lot of times the higher ups feel the pain because it might be something that's impacting them, whether it's a web filter or so they're banging down the door of the help desk as well. Like, I can't work like this. I'm lucky I sit on the cybersecurity committee. So in that room is, all different areas of the practice groups, the executives. And so I'm able to kind of lay out, hey, this is what's going on. This is the issues that we're running up against. And here's our solution. And I find that when you're just open and honest and say, we effed up, we picked a tool that we thought was going to work. It didn't, but coming in with a solution, like not just, we don't know what we're going to do, having that kind of already in your back pocket of like, no, we already know what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to do it. And I feel like that, gets them to buy in a lot.
It's amazing what a little bit of transparency and communication can do, right? And just being humble and honest, like, hey, we picked the wrong thing. It didn't work out like we thought it was. We crossed our
Right.
T's, and it just didn't work out. And like, it's our bad. We could have done this, that, or the other thing, but like, you can only spend an amount of time that you have. And so I think that goes a long way with most folks.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And in my experience with people getting emotionally attached to the decisions that they've made, right? And so like they'll buy a product like you're talking about, it doesn't work out, but they're emotionally invested in it because it's my decision. I don't want to look bad. But if we can curb that ego long enough to like solve problems, I think it does make the work environment a lot more of a successful place. So maybe that's another interesting takeaway, for the listeners and viewers.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, too, a lot of times it's like the devil you know versus the devil you don't. And we're like, are we getting rid of this, what we think is a terrible tool, and bring in something that's even worse? You
Right.
just don't know. But at the end of the day, you just have to, cut your losses and move on.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. All right. So quick admin. If you guys that are out there listening and watching wouldn't mind sharing this podcast with your crew, with your network, we really appreciate that. Helps us get the word out, and we see that you guys are doing that. We see it in the numbers, and we really appreciate it. So, with that said, Spencer, you want to carry on?
Yes, sir. So moving into a little bit of like implementation / adoption conversation. We talked about it a little bit, but I'd be curious when you're looking at a new tool or you're evaluating your needs for another tool, what are maybe the conversations you have with the team? What are the things that you're thinking about in terms of like what you need next? What's next on the maturity roadmap? What are some of those things that those conversations that you're having, those things that you're looking for, and how do you kind of approach introducing those new tools to an already, arguably like small, like very lean team? You mentioned 1.5 people, right? You have MDR, but like, how do you introduce those things without like overburdening a team with a bunch of new stuff? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so early, right? I like to bring them in the loop as early as I can because everybody has priorities that are different than mine. And we were doing a pretty good job of project management. It was a little bit more on the manual side. We didn't have a tool that showed, hey, here's what the apps team's doing. Here's what Mel's doing. Here's what this person's doing. We've since brought in a tool. So that's kind of early in its stages, but I feel like it's going to help us get to a better place with introducing new tools and new processes and new projects. But we have daily stand-ups. So if I'm looking to do anything, I'm bringing it there, right? Everybody in IT is in that room. It's an opportunity to ask questions. We have quarterly project meetings. We kind of do all the right things in that regard. But for me, I don't ever want to look like I'm trying to sneak something in. So to go back to being transparent, I try to be as transparent as I can because security already sometimes has a bad light. So I like to shine as much goodness on me as I can.
Fair enough. Imagine that. All of this is honesty and transparency. What a bizarre concept, right?
Seriously.
All right. So on some of these projects, inevitably you're going to face, you've already mentioned that one of them that you guys picked out didn't work out, but on the ones that you ultimately made work, obviously you're going to face challenges, right? You're going to get pushback from partners. You're going to get pushback from employees, maybe even from IT. How do you manage that? Like, I think that's an important problem because we hear a lot of that when people are trying to implement new technology in a security stack is like, we're about to change how the company does business to a degree. How are we going to introduce this to them? How does that work? So how do you manage that challenge of, pushback when you're implementing these new parts of the stack?
Yeah. So, I did think about this question quite a bit because I look at it from almost two different mindsets. The challenges that I face when I want to introduce something, and then on the flip side, the challenges that people face when they're trying to implement something. So not to really go down a road of like third party, risk management, but I do think for me, prioritization is a really big challenge because not everybody has a security hat that they wear that thinks of me Or on the flip side, they think their stuff has more weight than mine. And so how do we meet in the middle and have conversations about, here's what I'm trying to do, and here's the reasons why. It's going to help risk, it's going to help with compliance, whatever the case may be. And then here's what, and on the flip side, them telling me what they're trying to do. A lot of times I feel like I'm a little bit of an afterthought, which is why I go back to, I like to go in early and often, because I would expect the same courtesy when it comes, to bringing me in the loop.
Yeah.
I don't know if that really answers the question that you were looking for, but those are really like, the prioritization is really like, I think like the core of the struggle when trying to implement something new is like, where do I fit in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah. No, I think perspective is everything when we're having these conversations, right? And I think that one of the often overlooked qualifications of a successful security manager is people skills. Like having the ability to communicate well with these folks and explain what's going on. I think that's something we miss in just broadly speaking about cyber in general, is we miss the people aspect of this, and having some compassion for the people that have to put up with all the stuff that we do, in order to be successful. So I do think that is an important aspect of this. And it sounds like your answer to a lot of these challenges are just, hey, we go talk to these people, man. We work it out. We have open dialogue. And I love that. I think that is I think it's the right answer.
Yeah, no. And to your point, I mean, relationships are huge.
Yeah.
Right. If you don't have a good working relationship, or if you don't have a great personality, I mean, some people suck, but, I think your personality and how you carry yourself and, goes a long way. People respect that when, you don't look like you're trying to hide things and you're trying to help. I don't want to ever be looked at as a giver of work or a blocker. I want to be looked at as someone who's going to help you do your job better and in a secure way.
Yeah. I like that, because the contrast is usually like, you have to do what I say because I'm the security guy or girl.
Right.
And like, sorry, you can't do that because it's insecure. Like the right way to approach that is maybe, how can we work together to provide a secure solution that solves your problem?
Exactly. I'm working, like I said, I have a hybrid role reporting to me now, and I'm trying to tell him, like, we don't want to come from a place of no. So how can we meet the business requirements while still remaining secure?
I love it.
And one of the things I think about too with that is, and I'm curious your perspective is, when you're deploying a new tool or you're adopting a new process or something, I'm curious what percentage of like how successful it is determined based on the initial work. Because like, when you start working on a project and then after a while it kind of gets bold or boring or old, or you kind of lose track of things, you get busy doing other things. So I'm curious from your perspective on just like the logistics of it all, of like how much of the success of that project is determined based on like the first 90 days or whatever of implementing that project versus, like a project that carries out for a long time is much harder to implement.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm doing a POC or a POV or a pilot right out of the gate, because I feel like within the first 90 days, if it's not working, let's call time of death and move on. I think within that time frame if it's going to be successful or not. And go back to the lessons learned question is, I think we probably knew early on that we might be in trouble here, but we just kept chugging along. And then now you're a year in and you have to go backwards. So I really think anytime, if it's offered, a proof of concept in a pilot group, because then all that stuff that you're doing there, more often than not, can roll into production. So it's not like it's wasted work. And then you get a lot of good use cases, reporting, all that stuff that you can show to the executive team and the IT team to say, hey, look at all this great stuff. So
that's actually a really good segue to my next question. And that is, what type of metrics, reports, return on investment, how do you communicate that up to leadership, right? And we're just talking more from a budget perspective. Well, really two perspectives, right? One is, I need to buy this tool or I need to buy this service. I need to show them why it's important, right? And so I'm curious about that. But then the after effect is now I'm delivering the output from whatever this new thing is to leadership, and I need them to understand it and appreciate that the money that they spent is going into a good place. So
Right.
start with the first one. How do you get leadership buy-in for budgetary stuff? Like, what is your approach to that?
So honestly, it's pretty simple, and a lot of security tools come with a very high price tag. So the sticker shock is usually like, oh my God. But what I try to do is say, yes, this tool is really expensive. Imagine we get breached.
Right.
Imagine, we have, an incident. And what's that going to cost you? It's going to be a hell of a lot more than this $30,000 tool that I'm trying to put in place that is going to actually help our risk and help our security. So that's how I handle at least the starting negotiations when I'm trying to implement something, is just showing the value of the tool versus what could happen if we don't implement it.
Makes perfect sense. All right. So what about the after effects? So when you're getting, the deliverables, so to speak, because I'm trying to be as broad as possible to leave it open, but how are you communicating that back up? And I guess the crux of the question is, what are the key points here? When you're going to leadership and you're like, hey, we implemented Darktrace, we spent all this time tuning it, look what it did for us. Like, what are the key points? How do you prepare that and package it for delivery?
Yeah, so I think you almost need to have like reporting for two different audiences. So the executives who might not be super technical, and then you obviously want to show to your IT team all the work that they put into helping you implement this tool, what it's actually doing. But for the executives, I think driving it home to the clients, showing them like, hey, this is what, this is how, much it reduced our, you know, response time. This is how much, it reduced, we gained compliance. We passed our SOC 2 audit. All those things I think they like to hear about. So anything you can tie back to the client on that side of the house, I feel like is very important. They like to see trends. They like to see those types of things. They don't want to hear the technical jargon. They don't know it. And if anything, they're just like tuning you out at that point. And then on the flip, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I'd like to think that pen testing to some degree or another can kind of show your work a little bit. The way that you were able to, detect a lot of the internal movement and activities that Spencer was doing, I think speaks well to the money and the time that you guys have invested in that. So that can kind of be like a little trophy, like, hey, well, yeah, we had some findings, but holy smokes, man, they had to work extra hard to get anything in our environment, right? Which is a good thing.
Right, exactly. And I actually, I did put something together for the cybersecurity committee team to show, to your point, exactly what you just said. And, this is a testament to you guys, but you're honestly the first pen test vendor that we've had that called out security wins. The previous ones, and I've been doing it, like I said in the beginning, 20 plus years, I've gone through a lot of pen tests. They drop the report, here's how you suck, and have a nice day fixing it. Where you guys, and again, this is not a sponsorship plug or anything like that, but what
I'm going to send you the $20 in the mail. Don't worry.
Please do, yeah, and a T-shirt for God's sake. But what you guys do is great. You start off highlighting all the good things that the client is doing, and then you're like, oh, and by the way, you do have these other things that you need to work on. But you also take it further than that, where you offer your help if you need help remediating. So having you guys, and I don't know if we're going to talk about it, about, what goes into choosing a vendor, but the relationship, the post-sales relationship is huge. And you guys have been great at that. I feel like you're an extension of my security team, which it helps me sleep at night.
I love that. Well, actually, now that you mentioned it, we should talk about that. And I think that'll probably be our last topic before we wrap, because we're a little over time. But yeah, tell us about your vendor selection process, because, we had never worked with you guys before this particular series of engagements. And so what does that look like for you guys?
Yeah. So, I mean, we typically, we look at Gartner, right? We look at the Magic Quadrant to see what's out there. We'll reach out to other law firms of our size to see what, they're using. Obviously, conferences and things like that, which is how I, stumbled upon you guys, which was, obviously a win-win. And so yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot of cost. Again, I think I said it before, but how hard is it to implement? What's the overhead look like? And the executives, they do like to see, like, well, what is this? What are we going to benefit from this tool other than the security and risk? And if I can say, well, it has all this autonomous stuff like Darktrace does. So Darktrace is going to do all that, and that frees me up to do, X, Y, and Z. So I think that all kind of helps sell the tools as well.
No, I absolutely love it. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. All right. So, closing thoughts, advice, tips for other people, because there are a ton of listeners that are sitting in a chair just like yours, probably facing some of the same struggles that you face and clearly have overcome. So, can you just give any kind of closing thoughts, tips, advice for folks that are in your chair?
Yeah, I think I touched on it a little bit before, but a lot of times security is looked at as a blocker, a giver of work, trying to make things complicated. So I really try to build those relationships with the people that I work with and build a program that leans more on the positive things than the things that we're doing wrong. And how can I help you achieve what you're trying to do versus me just coming and dumping, a boatload of work on your plate. So I really think that is like super important. And yeah, that would be my advice, if you will.
I love it. I love it. Well, folks, that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for listening and watching. If you enjoyed this, like I said, please share it with your network, and check it out. Check us out over at offsec.blog and securit360.com. See you guys next week.
Thanks, guys.